Hello and welcome to the Rangers Rabble's interview with Rangers B team coach David McCallum. How are you, David?
I'm good, thanks, William. You?
Good stuff. I'm all good, mate. I'm enjoying looking out the weather while it's pouring the rain in sunny Scotland, as it is every other day. Right, we'll just get straight into it because I know you're a busy man, obviously you don't have a lot of time. So just want to touch on first, how do you think that the Lowland League season has been so far up to now?
I think what we try to do more than anything is look at the players' development over the spell and don't look at the Lowland League necessarily in isolation, William. Probably look at the bigger picture, all the different obviously competitions we're playing in the games you're describing just now, but and probably more than anything is the development of the players along the way. And we constantly keep referring to the players about, what have you gained on a daily basis? Why do you come in these blue gates every day and come to this unbelievable facility that we're very fortunate to call work on a daily basis? So the Lowland League, in terms of where we are, listen, we're in a situation where if you're looking at a league in terms of can they win it, yeah, they're in a position that they can. But from our point of view, as I said, it's more about what else has been achieved throughout the course of this season. What have the guys done well? Who's been close to the first team? Who's made their debut for the first team? Who's trained with the first team on a daily basis? Which challenged their development on a regular basis, so that ultimately at the end of it, we see some positive outcomes that ultimately our first team benefit from.
Yeah. I suppose looking from the outside, if you're a supporter, I suppose a lot of people look at Rangers and just think, well, Rangers have got some of the best young players in the country. We spend money, whereas a lot of the other Lowland League clubs don't. Like, do you understand why there's that level of expectation that Rangers should be winning the league?
Yes, listen. I know the situation. I know the expectation. Every time Rangers step into a game environment, we're expected to go and win. I understand that. Winning from our point of view, we are a development squad. We get into games to perform. We get into games for individuals to perform. We set individual challenges within games to try and set them kind of targets to go and achieve and show that they've actually improved and developed along the way. We know different games bring different levels of challenge, and obviously that's something we have to adapt to as well. Environments bring different levels of challenge, and again, that's other things we have to adapt to along the way. But at the same time, we understand that there's an expectation for us to go and win games of football, and when we don't, please don't think that nobody's disappointed, frustrated, or that we all want to go and do that. But as I say, more importantly, is that we see people, our players, developing to a point where our first team manager and staff ask questions about this. The thing we talk about all the time, any opportunity you get that you want to set people talking about you. Last week, when some of the first team, or obviously the first team lads were off the international, we come back a little bit earlier. We got some first team players in training with us, and the manager popped in to come and watch that as well at one point. And I keep saying to the players, was that your opportunity? Is that the point where the manager says, well, there's player A, player B, and suddenly that's an opportunity that they've never seen coming, and suddenly people start talking about them. So that is the biggest objective for this squad. Along the way, we want to go and play well. We want to go and win games of football. We want to go be competing for different competitions. Of course you do, because that's an expectation that comes with the badge. But as I say, nothing pleases us more when you see players that have made their debuts, and with some younger ones this season, which maybe has not always been the case. Those six lads, the Lovelace. You look at Paul Nisio, Archie Stevens, Bailey Rice, and that time Robbie Ewers obviously made his debut and scored as well as an 04 player. So they're the big wins. But of course we want to go and compete and perform and win on a daily basis. But 90 minutes cannot be the bit that defines how successful the individuals are. It's got to be the whole package.
Yeah. No, and I think that's a good point, because I think a lot of times, when you look at Rangers, you've got to remember that there's still a lot of young players in that squad, and some of them are developing, playing against men. It's not something that they've had before after stepping up. And all right, when you look at Zach Lovelace, I think maybe some people yet again forget he was 16 playing in the Lowland League. People just see the size of Zach and just think, well, he should be fine. But you've still got to no, on you go.
It's a good point he makes. I think some things we even look at Zach and you forget that he was 16, and obviously he has now turned 17. But there's still a little bit of this. I know he played for Millwall first team, but this is his first experience in a full-time environment, going at it as consistent as what we do. And there are sometimes we had to kind of take a step back with Zach and remind ourselves that he's still a young player, and we're taking him from what was a very I know he got, as I say, experiences with the first team, but ultimately coming out of an academy into a full-time environment, we are training at the level, trying to push him at on a daily basis, getting training opportunities with our first team, which again we keep talking about is as big an opportunity as anything to train daily and train at their speed, their intensity, their demands, because every step that you take is always a step up the way. But there are sometimes you have to say, maybe we need to take him off, maybe we need to start him as a sub, maybe we need to take him off the training pitch a little bit. But he's not that type of lad. He wants to train, he wants to play, he wants to be available all the time. So he's done really well for his first full season at the club, and we've been really pleased with his development so far, for sure.
Yeah, obviously anybody that's probably seen Zach this week, obviously being away with England under 17s, obviously Archie has done that as well. So I think as a club, it shows you that we're going in the right direction with some of these young players, and the fact that they're being called up to England is, is a big pat in the back, especially to a lot of the coaches and the work that goes on behind the scenes with these young players, which I think is really good. I just want to touch on something in the Lowland League this year, and it's obviously maybe something you've probably been asked 1,000 times after games. Well, played 32 games, we've scored 89, which is the most in the league, which is good going, but we've also conceded 50. As a coach, obviously you want to talk about the positives, but is conceding 50 goals in 32 games acceptable in terms of, being at Rangers, the standard of play that we've got?
Can never be deemed acceptable, that's for sure, William. There's no question about that. Context is key. That's always an important bit. We always try and look at the reasons why. Was it individual errors? Was it a team situation? Was it a structural issue? Was it simply that the opposition scored a good goal? There's all these different factors you need to look at. We'll always try and look. We'll break down every goal. There's no question. We'll break down every goal and try and look at why they've happened. We will experience different challenges, no question, in the league when you're playing against men. We always talk about levels and debates. Of course we can, but ultimately you're playing against players who are physically further developed. Some of our lads that can at times challenge us in some goals that we have lost, but not all of them. No question, not all of them. You can look at, was it a structural thing? Was it were we overplaying in certain situations? Now we want to play like a Rangers team, so that does involve us playing in areas of the pitch that others might not. Other teams might look at us and say, well, that is a right good opportunity to go and press us because we know Rangers will try and play. So you're trying to get that balance between playing the way we want to play, because that's what it needs to look like when you try and get to a first team. We always talk about playing together, playing close, but recognising when to escape the pressure and go and play in the next space, the next line. Will we make the right decisions? Sometimes we'll also make some wrong decisions in there as well, unfortunately. So yeah, that's something we would look at, but we try and get the understanding of managing games, moments in games. If I think about a goal that we lost against Broomhill, 2 or 3 minutes into injury time, sitting at 2-1. We had no reason to put ourselves in that situation, and it very much was a game management situation where we'd a throw in, we rushed to take it. We took a quick throw in when one of our players was tying his lace in the middle of the pitch. We've got the ball, we make probably the wrong decision at that point with the ball. Broomhill go quite direct, but we leave one of their players in a position that we don't need to leave. We could have covered that. We didn't need to commit that many players forward. But normal Rangers, the way we play involves full-backs getting really quite adventurous in attacking positions. So we try to play the same way as we would do at a point of the game where we didn't need to. So there's a game management aspect to it as well, and we keep trying to learn from that. We spend time looking at that, look at other teams, what they do at certain moments, so that we try and understand what is right for the time of the game. And what's maybe could be a better decision at that point, because ultimately we're talking about lads, if they're deemed at the first team level, could be playing first team football, and therefore they'll be challenged to try and make the best decisions more frequently, and ultimately make the best outcomes for the team. So listen, we'll never sit and say we'll be happy at losing that amount of goals. Of course we won't, but we'll need to try and keep making sure we learn from it. I would say to you, if you look across the board, it's a consistent thing now. If you look at international teams as well, at similar age groups, there's a lot of goals being conceded. So it's certainly something that will become a topical, and is becoming a topical conversation, that we try and make sure that we get better. For sure, that's always going to be the key. And individuals make better decisions, the team make better decisions, and ultimately we get the better outcomes.
Yeah, it's interesting you touched on that, because when I spoke to Cameron Campbell, he touched on the Aberdeen under-18 game where I think it was like Mason Munn passed the ball out to Finlay Curtis. He basically turned around, lost the ball, the Aberdeen player shoots and scores. But then also in that same half, we also continued to play out for the back, and then we end up scoring a fantastic goal that basically involved the whole team touching the ball before we scored. So I suppose from like my point of view, obviously being at the games, I see that the guys keep trying the same things, which is important because once you step up into Michael Beale's team, that's how he wants the team to play. So there's got to be that level of acceptance that the boys have to play in this manner. I know a lot of people would say, well, like for instance, that Broomhill game, why did we not just punt the ball 60, 70 yards and make them come all the way up the pitch? Like, do you get why like sort of people would say that to you? Because from I don't know what you say. Looking through the outside, people just think that winning's the most important thing. So where does like the development come in against like winning games of football?
It's, as I said to you earlier, the reality is that there'll be an expectation, a challenge for us to win games of football. And getting back to that game against Broomhill, ironically enough, at the time, it was actually a point we should have stayed on the ball in their half. And we actually attempted to make a pass that we probably didn't need to make at that particular point. So it's actually, it wasn't necessarily about a player maybe should have went longer at that point. It wasn't that. It was actually a point where actually we didn't need to make the pass at that stage. We weren't under pressure. We could have kept the ball in their half and actually played the game, up towards their right hand side. If I remember back at the point, we didn't. And that's probably the biggest bit as well as coaches. You can be that sort of PlayStation coach where you're constantly making decisions for players, and obviously in the games that we play in, you're not get the crowd environment that kind of drowns out a coach's voice at the side of the pitch. So you can still do that at the side. We don't want to do that. We want to kind of almost allow the players to make some decisions and make most of the decisions, because ultimately when they get to Ibrox and there's 50,000 fans there, they're not hearing the manager, not hearing the coach. So they need to be challenged at making the best decisions at the right time. But we need to accept sometimes it will fail. And sometimes, and a lot of time, we'll get it right. And it's trying to remember both, and then it's that balance off when it doesn't work. Let's talk about why was that the case, what would you have done differently. But when it does, and actually show them the many times, and there are many times, you spoke there about the Aberdeen goal that the 18 scored where they did the same thing, but they were successful. And you remember that because the outcome was positive and we scored. Yeah. But there have been lots of them that we didn't score, but there were still lots of positive bits of play. But the reality is, unfortunately, not unfortunately, because that's the game we're in football, you always remember the goals, fact. And then you always remember the outcomes, because ultimately that determines whether you get 3 points or not at the end of it. And that's the bit that people remember, that snapshot. So our job is to educate and support, to try and make sure we get better, as I say, the decision making and the execution, so that we get more right than we get wrong.
Okay, well, we'll look forward to the game at Ibrox on Sunday, which obviously is an exciting moment for the players, getting to play at Ibrox again, hopefully a good-sized crowd. What does that mean to you as a coach? You've obviously done it, a few times now. You've obviously been at Ibrox, you've coached at Ibrox, etc. What does it mean to you, as well as the players, to get to play at Ibrox in this type of game?
When we look at the start of the season and you look at what games, the programme you're involved in, the league, the youth league, the cups, and in terms of the first team cups, etc., the Glasgow Cup, there's games that naturally jump out at you and you go, yeah, they're the special ones. They're the ones you look forward to, and there's nothing more special than what the guys have got to look forward to this weekend. William, it's the pitch is in unbelievable condition, an opportunity to play at a stadium that is just phenomenal, and then hopefully, as you've touched on there, a crowd that comes to support the lads at the same time. There's so much that comes with this opportunity, an Old Firm game there as well. So much that comes with opportunity that the boys have been looking forward to, not just this week, not just the week before that. And the reality is, you're trying to keep the players focused on the here and now and how they're developing. But when you see games come up on the horizon that's exciting as this, then, and as I say, in the environment with the support, hopefully, as we said, it's a fantastic game to look forward to, that's for sure.
Obviously, earlier in the season, we went to Parkhead and the result maybe didn't actually show the actual performance, because I actually thought we played some pretty good football at times that day. How do the players look at that? Is that like something that they want to kind of right or wrong, or do the players just get into this game just as another game?
Well, I think the first thing, William, I'm so pleased that you've recognised and said there about the first part of the game, the 75 minutes. Because effectively the game, if you look at it, was a 75-minute game, and we're sitting 2-1 in a good position. Pleased with a lot of what the guys have been doing. And then we have a couple of moments of madness and that's what we spoke about, and the boys have been open to speak about that as well, that changes feeling, changes momentum. And ultimately the result clearly goes the way it does. And that is, you talk about right or wrong, I think first and foremost, we'll look at what we do well. We look at how we want to play in that game. We look at what we have done, what we're capable of doing. And that's the targets we'll set. We won't look at it and look back and say, okay, here's what didn't go well. Not at all. We'll look at what we can do and where we can get success, where we have had success, and we'll challenge the players to the plan, but also to think about being creative, being individual, backing themselves, and recognising, excuse me, how good they have been in these environments. And we'll challenge it, go there again. Excuse me.
That's okay. You're always going to say as well, in that game, when you're actually 2-1 up and you're on the touchline, and you're probably quite happy because obviously you're there, you're playing against a big crowd. You know, there's like whatever that was, 10,000 people that's at that game. You know, James Graham slots away a lovely finish. And you're actually thinking, all right, there's only 15 minutes to go here. If the worst comes to the worst, maybe we draw the game. How quickly can things change in that game though? Like, how do you go from that to then losing like the scoreline and it finished? Like, how does that happen on a football pitch? How do you like sort of view that as a coach?
It's a great question, because I think if you break the game down, like we spoke about earlier, I thought the first half, I thought we were good out of possession. I thought we were okay in possession. I thought we had some good moments, but not consistently. I thought the second half, I thought some of the bits of play in possession up until we went 2-1 up, I thought were excellent. I thought we had a more complete performance from 45 to 75 until they get to come back to 2 each. So feeling momentum, it's amazing. The smallest detail can change feeling within a game. And listen, we spoke about it in the FA Youth League games. The higher the level of the games in the opposition, because it's a good game, it's a good level game of football. Both teams want to try and play a certain way. It's a challenge of whose tactics are going to be successful, how the players can implement their individual talent within the game plan at the same time. So, but small margins can change games. It can be simple things like a set play. It can be a concentration lapse. It can be a decision. It can be, maybe not us being ruthless and taking chances at key moments in the game as well, which can kill the game for us. So there's so many different factors can influence change, but ultimately mood can be a deciding factor. When people start to feel that momentum going against you, that can be a challenge. But equally, when you take that momentum, James' goal was excellent, a fantastic goal, and should have been the one that put us in a situation to win the game. But for a couple of moments where we switched off and concentration let us down.
Yeah. I wanted to touch on just quickly on the sort of UEFA Youth League as well. I sort of look at like the sort of brutal nature of the UEFA Youth League. When we went down to Liverpool, we probably didn't really create that many chances that day overall. We obviously ended up losing the game 4-1. And yet, not that long after that, we play Liverpool in the home game. And we actually played quite well. We were maybe unlucky not to take something out of that game. How do you go from like sort of playing away from home, maybe not having a lot of possession, maybe a lot of good chances, to then like almost turning it right the way around and actually managing to almost get a result? How do you do that against that level of opposition?
You learn. I know we keep using that word, you learn, and I think the word that you used is actually it's a good way to describe when you're in a high level game. It can be brutal. It can be brutal in a way that you are the benefits of that. You're the one that are the team that puts your foot in the throat of the opposition. You become the one that really goes for the kill. If it goes the other way, it's difficult as the Liverpool one. I actually, believe it or not, the Liverpool game is probably the one I look back on and think that was a good moment for us, bizarrely, because it's a horrific result. It didn't go the way that you want to go, but we took a lot from it. And the bit you've described when you go to the next game, because they're a good team, and you were a good team. The challenges in different ways tactically, but they also had very good individual players who could have game-defining moments, and they did have that. But the second game, again, I thought we went toe-to-toe. We had some big moments. We scored 3. We could have scored more. The last goal that we lose is avoidable, for sure, and more than one moment of that. So, but it's back again. If you don't get it right, it's brutal. High-level games, if you don't get it right, it's brutal. Not just at the youth league level, first team level. It's just a fact of what it is. So I was really pleased that the players learned from that, because to go in the next game and the fact that we're so disappointed that we didn't win was huge.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, without obviously touching on a player that's not at Rangers, but see when you look at Liverpool and you look at somebody like Ben Doak, who obviously played in both games, a young kid who obviously had not long moved from Celtic to Liverpool, and he's now in the first team. Like, is that something you can say to your young players? Look, guys, that's where you could be if you get to this level, if you can do that. Is that something as a coach that you talk about, or do you think the players themselves know where they need to be if they need to get to that level?
I think any player that's in this environment have got to have the ambition to believe and belief, sorry, that they can go and become a first team player, and at the club obviously they're at the moment. So keyword is impact. We can talk about what they do on a daily basis, get the gains that they've been coming into this building, whether it be from, we talk about ball game, body, mind, as being the key pillars of our individual development. But impact's important. How do you impact the game when we have the ball? How do you impact the game when you don't have the ball from the position we're asking you to play in? And then at that point, it then becomes about the first team manager and staff taking a belief and liking in you. But I've seen players go in games against top level players and perform and produce. So it's doable for sure.
Well, right, I just want to touch on obviously something that the academy put out this week. They were talking to Aaron Lyle, kind of getting to know him a little bit, the player that he is when he came through the academy. And he touched on the fact that in the summer, you decided to move him from basically being a wide player where he was obviously getting forward, scoring goals, creating chances, more into a kind of midfield 10 position almost. How did that come about, and what have you seen from Aaron that would suggest that he can play in that position?
I think the first thing myself, Brian, any coach that's worked with Aaron Lyle, is you see a technically gifted football player.
Yeah.
Somebody that you trust when he has the ball. And in fact, probably his best moments are when he's right in the middle of pressure. I really like him in the middle of pressure. It's somebody I think no matter where he is, he can deal with the ball. So that bit becomes a deciding factor. That's a big... dealing with the ball is important to play here. You can talk about everything else, but you need to be able to handle the ball. And Aaron does that in abundance. Sometimes when they played higher up the pitch or a side, it takes too long for him to go on the ball. So that then we start looking at, okay, so if we want him on the ball, but he's maybe not getting him there as the pitch you want him to be in, then how can we find a way for him to influence the game, maybe in a different area, but still have an impact? And that's again back to that key word again. What it does involve for him, and it's something that he's got better at, is running more without the ball, because that's something he had to do to play in a different position. He needs to be able to go and put pressure on the ball in a different area, and needs to be a bit more patient sometimes in terms of when he puts pressure, who he goes to put pressure on. But more importantly, as I say, is how he handles the ball. I think when we almost played him as a kind of right 8, but jumping to be a 10. I love to see him dribble, I love to see him take the ball back to play, and a defender come to put pressure on from a side, from a different angle, 2 or 3 players coming at him, because I know he can escape, and I know he can see where the escape pass might be as well. So I thought what was really good about him was he started the season probably not in the team.
Yeah.
There was other players playing ahead of him. Kane Richie Horsler was there. Then when we got to the UEFA Youth League, he didn't start the games until the fourth game, and he really started to turn up, and I thought he handled the situation really well with not playing, which shows a good level of maturity.
Yeah.
But I thought the edge when he came back in was terrific, and I'm so pleased that he's shown the level that he has done. But ultimately now it's not about being a Rangers B team player. It's about performing at a level where he goes beyond us, and that's the message.
Yeah. No, and that's the thing. I've actually been really enjoying watching Aaron since he's come into that midfield role. The way that he gets on the ball, the way that he creates chances. In fact, I think it was him that created James's opportunity for the goal. I think it was him that made the pass. It was a lovely through ball. And it
was also his pass for Zach Lovelace for the penalty at Parkhead.
Yeah, and I think these are things that maybe, I think at times maybe we always look for the negatives rather than the positives. Like Aaron moving inside could be a positive thing for the rest of his career now, because that's maybe where he ends up playing when he does move into Rangers first team or somebody else's first team. So the actual change might benefit him in the long term. Yeah. Whereas a lot of people would maybe look at it and say, well, he wasn't in the team. Why wasn't he not in the team? Was he not good enough to be in the 11? And sometimes there's more to it than just that. And I think maybe as football fans, we don't look at the bigger picture. And that maybe sometimes for a player, I remember seeing James Maxwell coming in as a winger, move back to a fullback, and I questioned that decision. I'm not going to lie, I was sitting going, why are we moving a winger into fullback? But
sorry, I think I might have been involved in that one as well. Apologies for that.
No, of course. And I think, look, you don't always agree with everything that maybe the coaches do at the training ground, but see, often when you look back at it, they were probably right in what they did, because James is now having a career as a fullback or a wing back, depending on how he's going to be utilised. And maybe at the times you do question things. And I suppose from the outside, maybe you just need to hope that, like the good coaches that are there, the guys who have played in the game a long time, they understand what they're doing.
I think on that one, which is important, when we make those decisions, it's not to win that game.
Yeah.
We make those decisions to give the boys the best chance of having a football career. So if we look at James Maxwell with a terrific left foot, but if he's going to play high up the pitch, for Rangers, he's competing with different types of players. So that's a challenge. So left back, thought suited him. Robbie Fraser's another one as well. Midfielder, shifting to left back. We believe that, and listen, we're not guaranteed to be correct. We can't turn and say that's the case, but we believe that the attributes that these guys have, if we've changed them position, is because we believe that will give them the best chance initially, hopefully, to have a career at Rangers. If not, then obviously at a level that's good enough to go in a first team career.
That's great. Well, that's great, mate. Thanks very much for joining me. It's very much appreciated. Thanks for touching on so many different things, from the development of the players, the Lowland League, the UEFA Youth League, talking about the game at Ibrox, how we've got to learn from the mistakes that we make sometimes, how we can improve the squad, etc. So just thanks very much for joining me. It's very much appreciated.
No problem. We'll enjoy that. Thanks.
Cheers, mate. Thanks very much. And we'll see you all again very soon. Cheers, guys.